Call the meeting tonight, IRRRB board to order. Roll call, we're missing Senator Eichhorn, I assume he's on his way. Second item is approval of the June 7th, 2019 minutes. Representative Lehman moves. Second, Representative Sandsted. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Or opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We're out of practice, folks. It's summertime. Commissioners report comments.
Yeah, I don't have a lot, but I would just point out a few things that I think most people are aware of. But as part of our efforts of getting more participation in our programs, we've had a number of forums. We had our development team been very busy. We had a community grant program workshop over in Mount Marin where they had, I think it was like 90 people showed up or something from all the communities, where they go through all the grant programs and how you apply and things like that. We did one with a business finance seminar where we had the bankers in and stuff like that, so we go over all of our financing programs. And then we participated. We didn't hold this, but there was a brownfields workshop conducted locally here, and we participated in that. And I believe there's a broadband conference coming up that we're participating in as well. So we're out there trying to make sure that the communities are aware and of our programs and deadlines and things like that. I also want to bring up that Iron Range Engineering received the $100,000 donation from Boise from Packaging Corporation of America. When we get our business community investing, I think that is a really testament to the value of the program when the business community who has hired people from the program are investing. So they made a $100,000 donation recently. The last thing I just want to mention that Governor Walz had an executive order regarding tribal relations with state agencies, and we have to have a consultation agreement with tribes that we touch in our service area. We have 4 of them. I've appointed Al Betchika as our tribal liaison person. So Al and I have been, we met recently with Boys Fork. We have meetings scheduled with Grand Portage and Leech Lake. So we'll be following through on that. Now every cabinet level position sits on the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. IRRRB's been on it for years, but we weren't to the level where we required a consultation agreement, and that's changed now, so we're going to have them with all the tribes that we interact with. So we're fulfilling our obligations under that executive order, and I just want the board to be aware of that in case you have contact with any of the tribal governments. And any questions on any of those things?
Mr. Chairman. Senator Thompson.
Commissioner, consultation agreement in regards to what?
It talks about our relationships and what they're eligible for, and what the agency does to make sure that the tribes are full understanding what all the state agencies can offer and get input from them and things like that. So we had a great meeting with Boys Fort, I thought, regarding what they have going on. We learned a lot about their tribal government and where they are financially and things like that. So,
Senator Thompson. Okay.
I was just wondering if they have to help you make decisions at the agency, or if
no, we've always treated all the tribal governments that we in our territory as local units of government, just like we would a city or a township or whatever. So I don't think that we're going to change much as far as what we've done. So,
Representative.
I guess I didn't raise my hand, but I do have a question. You said there's 3 tribes that we touch?
4.
4 tribes that we touch. How many are within the TACNet assistance area?
4.
There's 4 within the technical assistance area.
Two are very small geography. I believe Leech Lake touches the Grand Rapids School District.
Lake Winnie area,
Yeah. And then what's the,
Fond du Lac.
Fond du Lac touches where though?
Brookston,
Yeah, Brookston. But 2 that have substantial geography, which are Boys Fort and Grand Portage.
Any other questions for the commissioner? I'd like to make one comment about the grant that PCA made to Iron Range Engineering. I don't know if we need a motion for this, but I'd like a letter from.
No, you don't need an emotion.
Okay.
We'll take
Do a
care of
letter
that.
of thanks for that. I think it's, especially a company that's not in the taconite assistance area that's willing to make that kind of donation because they know how valuable it is, is a good statement. So,
We'll take care of that.
thank you.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's a pretty good indication of how good that place is running and all the great things that they've accomplished over the years and the innovative educational system that we've got for their engineers. I think people are really, really realizing that people come out and they're ready to work and you know, the way that business and government and college are working together there is a model for everybody to adhere to.
Great.
Any comment?
Nope.
All right,
Move on.
thanks, Commissioner. Next on the agenda, item 4, Hylian USA Incorporated, Resolution 20-001. Oh, he's here. How you doing, Matt?
Good, how are you?
Good. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The first project for consideration on the agenda is a direct loan to Hylian USA, Inc. I think as most of you probably remember, this board approved equipment financing in the amount of $3.5 million last January or January of 2018 to Hylian to enable them to equip a facility and get into operation in Mountain Iron producing solar panels. Hylian is based out of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and with current market conditions, they wanted to have some production capacity in the United States. They chose Mountain Iron, the facility that formerly housed Silicon Energy. The company is doing well in Mountain Iron. They currently have 87 employees, which is quite a few more than we had expected when we had approved our loan last year. They have identified a bottleneck in their production process, and the funding that's currently being considered would eliminate that bottleneck by automating a part of the plant. While that would eliminate a few jobs on each shift, it would enable them, the efficiencies gained would enable them to add a 4th shift. The net job creation would result in, it's anticipated 15 new jobs onto the 87 that they currently have. I guess other than that, I'd just say Martin Pocharuk, the CEO of Hylian, along with Joanne Bath and Aaron Shea, the local managers, are in attendance, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions. Before that, just one quick comment. Just like to point out, there has been some confusion in how I wrote the project up. We are looking at a $600,000 direct loan for equipment and not a $600,000 direct loan for equipment and $11 million in working capital. The working capital is private through their private Canadian lender. So I did want to clarify that before I open it for questions.
Thanks, Matt. That's why I called you the other day. Senator Thomasoni, or Senator Bach, I mean.
Well, there was an open house there in early August, I want to say August 2nd, and my wife and I went and took a tour, and it was fascinating. And I just want to encourage any that haven't taken a tour. I'm sure they would find time to accommodate you to do that. But it really was pretty fascinating to see all those panels and see all the control issues that go into making sure they're going to work when they get to the other end and there's not a wire loose someplace. It was pretty fascinating to see. So if you haven't seen that, really, try find some time to schedule a tour there and take a look at it, because they appear, from what I can see, to be doing pretty well and could potentially be a very successful business on the range.
Representative Sandsted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if Mr. Pachtruk, and I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly, could maybe give the board an update on your financial progress or from each quarter how you're doing in terms of gains, losses, since you've been in Mountain Iron.
Good morning, everybody. That's fine, I can project. Thank you. We started in this facility exactly a year ago. In terms of employment, we, as you know, started with 5 employees. We're around 90 right now. The pro forma for this year is to exceed $100 million. So we are right now, for the facility in Mountain Iron, completely sold out until February of 2020. For the Canadian facility, I would say, there is still a little bit of capacity for the last 2 weeks of December. So with that, what I mean is that out of the pro forma, most of it is already sold. So, whether, we end up shipping the equivalent of 102 million or 97, that will depend on the projects, because most of what we sell relates to projects. Therefore, there's construction related, and we cannot determine exactly what the amount will be. But we will be very close to the $100 million, which means, in between 3.5 and 4 million of EBITDA for this year.
EBITDA. Representative Sandsted.
Thank you. So as a gain, or are you, excuse me, financially, are you at a break-even point, or are we moving into profit right now?
Since 2010 that we have started, the only 1 year that was not EBITDA positive was 2018, due mainly because of the federal administration policies around import tariffs. Right, that made us, force us to position and invest into the Mountain Iron facility, and that's the main reason, believe it or not, that we have to thank the administration to have us here.
Representative Sandsted.
So you are projecting to be profitable in 2019, is what I'm understanding you to say?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I emphasize that the company has been profitable every single year since 2010, except for 2018.
Representative Sandsted.
Thank you. And are your financial statements available to the public?
Of course not. It's a private company.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's it.
Senator Thompson.
I'll move the project, but also I just want to point out that this is an example of the agency investing in something and having something from the state level available for somebody, because when Silicon Energy was a result of the Minnesota Made legislation, all of the solar panel manufacturers in the state of Minnesota are now not in existence, and this is the only one in Minnesota that's actually making solar panels for the future of the solar industry. And it's pretty interesting that the reason they're here is because we actually had a solar manufacturing plant that was ready and up and running for them to, and plus we had some people who knew how to manage the place. And so my compliments to Hylian for coming here and putting the project online. I got to echo what Senator Bach just said about touring the plant. You got to see these machines. I mean, they go, whoop, it's stuff that's absolutely unbelievable, and they are handling these little the things are so thin that they could break at any moment in time, and they have a very, very incredible computerized quality management system that approves every single panel before it goes out, that if the installers break it while they're installing it, they can't blame the manufacturer because they know that it wasn't broken when it got to the installer. I mean, it's really, really an incredible system. And if I'm not mistaken, we're working 24 hours a day. and thinking about having even more people coming on if we get this new equipment. So, and the fact that we have a manufacturing plant on the Iron Range and have manufacturing jobs on the Iron Range like this is really, really impressive. And I think we have to do whatever we can to help them.
We have a motion by Thomasoni, second by Liz Lagarde on this resolution. Representative Liz Lagarde.
I'd just like to, echo what Senator Thomasoni said. We talk about diversifying the Iron Range, and we talk about a clean energy, right, moving forward. This is a wonderful example where, once again, the Iron Range is leading the way. And I'm very proud to support this. I hope you all the success, and I look forward to working with you in the future to advance this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 5, Northern Opportunities LLC, Resolution 20-002.
Mr. Chairman, members, Scott Sunball will introduce this project.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. The next project is a participation loan for Northern Opportunities LLC, RSF Industries, doing business as Range Steel, Hibbing. The total project is about $1.9 million. It's an expansion and an equipment loan. We will be participating with Security State Bank on the real estate side. Our loan will be for $760,000. And I have Jeff Halter here, owner of Range Steel, if you guys have any questions.
Any questions from the board for the presenters?
Yep, give us a little history of that.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, the history starts back around the 1920s. Small company, did various things. Grew through the 1960s. It was owned by the Lee family in Hibbing. 3 generations of Lees brought it through different types of companies. In the 60s, they ran about 120, 130 employees. And then in the 1980s, it split into 3 different companies over in Hibbing. You've got Range Steel Fabricators, which is the one we're talking about that my wife and I own. We bought it in July 1st of 2016. There's 2 other companies that were sister companies that are no longer related. There's a roofing company and a heating and sheet metal company. So we, in 2016, took it over. My wife and I had left the area. We're from Grand Rapids originally. We had family in Hibbing. And we left the area for about 20 years on some corporate endeavors of mine, I guess, and wanted to come back. And this was our opportunity to do so. We came back with about 6 employees in 2016, and now we're running in the 22 to 25, 26 employees. I'm proud to say things like the highest paid employee when we took over was at $15 an hour. Now our highest paid employee is $39. We're moving everybody in that direction. We believe firmly in growing a team. Everyone talks about labor force shortages and things like that, and we intend to keep the ones that do value for us. We hired 3 more on Friday, anticipating going into this project and continuing to grow. We do have one key partnership coming up, Jagco Manufacturing. I'd like to talk about them. A lot of what this growth is going to be is shifting manufacturing that they do in Pittsburgh to our facility in Hibbing. So I think that's a key component of what we're doing here.
Senator Thompson, Mr. Chair, for not asking. I mentioned earlier, but so why did you decide to come back to the range?
Family. We have little kids. We grew up here. This is more what we're used to. We were living in Orlando, Florida. I had a great job. I kind of peaked out though, and the culture down there was very unfamiliar to us. And we wanted to get home, raise the kids in a small town where we can enjoy the outdoors with them, teach them the things that we grew up doing. So I would say it was family driven, and then also career. I had kind of done what I wanted to do, and I wanted to change. I'd always wanted to own a business, and I'd always wanted to make stuff. So between those 2 things and then bringing the kids home.
Senator Thompson.
So let's make a commercial about what he just said. And And secondly, how are the local laborers performing for you, the people that you've hired?
You know, it's a big struggle, you know, going from 6 in that first year, I went up to about 18, and that was a very tough thing to do. We went through a lot that didn't quite pan out. I'd say now we're building a great team. 2 of the 3 we hired on Friday, though, don't have any welding experience. We plan on training them in-house. So we're trying to set up a little bit of an in-house kind of informal, apprentice type of deal. We've had good luck with the young guys that, haven't gone down a bad path yet and looking to work, and we're, to some extent trying to parent them and train them on the job. And we've had a good success with about 5 guys on the floor that have been that type of a model. And we're going to kind of grow that. There's a lot of competition for the experienced guys, though. And that's why I said we're willing to escalate the wages, because the good guys that we have need to stay and train these young guys for us. So to answer your question directly, we struggle with bringing experienced guys in for sure.
Has the workforce been reliable though? Once they get
No. It's the reliability is probably our biggest issue. A lot of people think 3 days a week is enough to show up, and that's difficult. So those are the type of people that we have weeded through, and I would say that I've got 23 guys today that are reliable, but replacing those and growing those with reliable people is difficult.
Do you find yourself as a training ground then? Do people leave because of that, or is it just unreliability on some workers in general?
Yeah, well, we're probably in a little bit of a unique spot, when we're competing against heavy taconite, up the road, or L&M radiators. So, so for us to attract guys is a little bit more difficult. But I think that we're starting to get a little bit of a brand name for potential employees as well. They're starting to realize that we're willing to invest in some of that training. So we're definitely seeing more of an applicant pool coming through recently.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm just looking at thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at the collateral. It looks like we have a first position on the mortgage. Is that right?
Correct.
And it looks like you're also providing personal guarantees. Is that correct?
Correct.
My wife and I are, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Representative Sandsted moves Resolution 20-002, seconded by Senator Root. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion signed, motion carries. Thank you. Next up, Resolution 20-003. North Holmes Children's Family Services.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this project has 2 components on the agenda. The first being the participation loan that is under current consideration, and there is a second component of that being an infrastructure grant to the city of Grand Rapids in the amount of $350,000. That's part of the infrastructure projects that'll be considered next. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Scott Sunvall will present on the participation loan side of things.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, our next participation will be with North Holmes Children's Family Services. The total project is about $7 million. It's kind of a moving target while they do some value engineering. Our portion of the loan will be $1 million, and the project will be a new psychiatric residential treatment facility in Grand Rapids. The state of Minnesota awarded North Holmes 52 psychiatric beds, and in this new facility will house 32 of those. So as Matt alluded to, there are multiple parts that we're involved with in this project. The lead bank will be Woodland Bank. Our portion will be $1 million. We also have a demolition grant in and an infrastructure grant. DHS will also have a grant and the Blandin Foundation. The project is planned to produce 65 to 80 new jobs. And then I have Luke Francisco and Jim Christmas here for questions.
Questions from the board? Oh, Representative Sandsted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What kind of jobs are these going to be?
It'll be across the spectrum, nurses, psychologists, clinical social workers, case managers, and direct care child care providers.
Representative Sandsted.
Thank you. I know last year you were looking at a site in Buell and eventually decided to pull back from that location. And one of the issues that was cited was being able to find a workforce to staff that. What has changed?
Not a ton, to be frank. It's still a challenging reality that we're facing. But we're optimistic because we'll need less. On our current campus, we have a residential treatment facility, the cottage it's called. And it is a 20-bed facility that we're going to convert to a PRTF. So the staff that are already there, and a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the clinical components, as well as the risk management and QA and all of those things are already there on the campus. So we'll probably need about half as many as we would if we did a new start in a new location. So that's one key element. Basically the key element of making that staff with less on the ground.
Representative Sandsted.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. In that facility, you'll go from 20 beds to 32?
That facility will stay at 20, and then the rest will go into the new facility.
And will that,
Sandsted.
thank you, Mr. Chair, will that new facility be attached to that same or located in a different location, same proximity?
Right next door. So 30 feet.
Yeah, just the campus.
And then behind that, our intent is to build a wellness center for recreation, cultural programming, spiritual programming, nursing, and then our education center that the school district 318 provides the educational service.
Representative Lizgard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, to get 52 beds in greater Minnesota is wonderful, so that I commend you. Where I do have a little issue is I was here newly elected, and you came before all of the local communities because it's such a big issue here. And we did look at the Buell, and we worked very hard to help you. And for that just to be shelved, my question to you is, did you look at possibly building new here? Or was it automatically you were going to go to Grand Rapids?
We went from Buell, and you're so correct, Representative. In our full, well-hearted, well-intended pursuit of looking at that Buell campus was something that we put a lot of time, as well as many of you did, into looking at. And at the end of the day, having it on that campus, these services are extremely high risk, as you know, from the Masabi Academy experience and then the other providers' experience. There's a lot of risk and a lot of liability, and we needed to really minimize that. And so having that close to home in our sense as Grand Rapids was really making a lot of sense on both those fronts.
Representative Lizgard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with that said, it's a business model, and you have to do what you have to do. So my question is there anything in the future that would lend you to move this way where it's still a very big need? Or are you going to be tapped out and because I believe there's only three people awarded, right?
Yeah, three, and they'll be putting out their RFPs sometime within the next year or so. DHS will, for additional providers to come on board. There will be a big push for those to happen down closer to the metro. We're awarded 52 beds. that could go away if we don't get this done. So we really are very, very hopeful that we can get it here on the range. We are a provider that services St. Louis County, and as well as other counties across the range. We're a regional provider. We hire regionally. A lot of our folks are coming from Hibbing and Virginia and so forth in terms of employment, and certainly the kids. And this level of care is of extremely high need. We currently in the state of Minnesota are shipping, there's over 300 kids on a wait list for this level of care. Many, many, many kids with very high needs in terms of their own emotional issues are being sent out of state, or away from home, family, and all of this. So our hope is, to do it in Grand Rapids would certainly be a very, very valuable resource to St. Louis County as well.
Representative Lizagard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just conclude by saying that it's disappointing, but yet I'm very, very pleased that Greater Minnesota is getting 52 more beds. Thank you.
Representative Sandsted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the average length of stay for an individual in a residential treatment program?
In the PRTF model, what they're looking at is 6 to 9 months on the high. Again, these are kids that have blown out of multiple placements through various levels of care, who are really currently sitting in emergency rooms, crisis shelters, or at home and really unsafe circumstances. So it really is, it's all individualized, but on the average length of stay basis, it's looking like 6 to 9 months is probably.
Representative Sandsted.
Thanks. I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing, and I wish you well on this.
Senator Rude.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too think that it's fabulous that we have beds going to Greater Minnesota, because this is really, we're pretty much in the crisis mode in most of the state. Can you just maybe talk to me about, or us, about how the Grand Rapids School would be integrated into and what's the expectations of, do the children go to that school, or I mean, just maybe talk a little bit about that relationship in the education of the children.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to build a new educational facility, which we're really excited about having it. Currently, ISD 318 Grand Rapids provides educational services within our 2 residential facilities that we have now. And we have a long-standing, really good collaborative relationship with them in that regard. And actually it's by statute, the child care and treatment statutes. The school district in which you're located is mandated to provide education. And so they do that. And they do it well, and we have a really good relationship with them. So this will not only be the employees that we're looking at onboarding with this new project, but there'll be 10 teachers and paras new in 318 for the educational component, somewhere in there. So.
Thank you.
Representative Wayman.
Yeah. I guess I would just like to speak to this a little bit. I appreciate where Representative Sandsteed and Representative Little are coming from. When we knew that there was a facility being looked at on the east end of the range, I talked to the providers here, and they said they were thrilled, because they said that would cover the whole region. They just wanted something within the region because we were lacking. And then there was this opportunity through the state of Minnesota for just a few awards. And so it was just recently that I learned that North Homes was looking at doing, or had actually been awarded. And then I talked to the CFO, Luke Francisco here, about the margins, and the margins are really slim for this. We need this to happen, but it's not a profitable business. And so we're hoping that this loan will help them reduce the cost of their debt to the extent that they can make a go of this. They do need to move, as Mr. Christmas said, quickly, or we could lose this to the metro. And this is going to be the only award up in this region, and I think it's going to not only serve our population, but it's going to help our counties reduce some of their costs for out-of-home placement and so on. So North Homes has been in existence for, 35 years, something like that. Operated very successfully, so they have a proven model. And I'm just excited. I think we all went down to St. Paul with mental health as one of our top priorities. We just know that we don't have a good system in place across the state. And so this is a first kind of a stab at attacking that issue, and it plays into a whole host of issues that we're dealing with here in the state of Minnesota. So I'm pleased that this is happening someplace in northeastern Minnesota, and I think it's going to serve all of us. And so I'm just happy to be looking at this project here today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Thomasoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I too am disappointed that the Buell School didn't pan out. I understand the challenges that were there, and I understand that there were some licensing issues as well as remodeling issues that might have caused it a problem. But I know that we need these really badly. I just had a discussion with United Way of Northeastern Minnesota, and they will most likely be contacting you as well as Northwoods and Duluth to talk about the possibility of doing a similar center on the Iron Range, and I realize you have to have beds awarded also. I'm of the opinion that we don't have to put more beds down in the Twin Cities. I'm of the opinion we should be able to get more up here, because when you hear stories like we had to send a kid to Fargo because there's no place to put him here, that just means the services aren't available, and that just means that we have to get proactive, and we have to be doing something that will allow kids to stick around here and be close to their families. And I'm extremely disappointed about not getting the Buell School done, but who knows, maybe we'll find something else for that place, or maybe we'll find another system here. But I want you to seriously look at the possibility of trying something in the Central Iron Range, because I know that when the meeting I had just the other day with United Way, they were extremely focused on trying to figure out how to do something for kids in this area, because the need is so great, and you know it better than I do. And so I'm going to support this today. I understand we need to get it done. I understand that it's an important component of treatment that we need up here. Like Representative Lehman just said, that our mental health system doesn't work the way it should, and that maybe that's incumbent upon us to try and figure out how to change it so that it works better. But at the same time, we have to look seriously about something in the Central Iron Range.
Senator Bach.
I'm just curious if someone knows the answer to this. I understand that the school district where your facility is located has to provide education for them. I'm just wondering, most of those people living in your facility probably aren't residents of that school district. So I'm just curious, does the state pay the per pupil state aid to 318, or does 318 just bill the home school district for whatever the costs are? I don't want to put too much of an additional burden on a school district either by building these kind of facilities. So are the students' resident districts built back? Do you know how that works?
Yeah, it's that. Yes, the resident, it's a bill back to the district in which the child came. And I don't know the math around that or how it's shaking out. I'm sure that 318 was losing a lot of money on it. I've heard about it years ago. So it seems to be, it seems to keep it at least flush.
I raised that, Mr. Chairman, because it's an issue that's been floating around the legislature, and Duluth has been raising it pretty strongly about what they're being billed back. And I think there's a pretty good possibility that there's going to be some kind of caps put on what one school district can just automatically bill back to another one for educational programming for kids with special needs. And I mean, some districts are being billed back like $20,000 a pupil, right? When incumbently, if they educate them themselves, they could educate them for, in some cases, Duluth tells me, about half of that cost. Yeah. So there's a conversation that's going to happen at the legislature around that I think is won't involve you necessarily, but I think for our school districts, it probably got to pay some attention to it.
Let me ask one more question.
Senator Thompson.
Charters are taking advantage of it. Should try to fix that.
Buell School was a kids' peace operation. It was more of a juvenile detention center than anything. There's some very serious offenders that were in there, and there was about 200 people working in the place at the time. What level of treatment do you have as compared to what they had there? Because they were doing long-term treatment there as well as trying to put kids back into communities and have them come out of there functional. And we actually found a report that done by the same group that shut the place down, telling us that that might have been a mistake because it's way more expensive to send kids out of state, and they don't have the good results like they were getting when they were here. And at some point, I would love to see if Kids Peace would like to come back and reopen the place. But they also said that all the kids from Kids Peace that were sent back to their homes ended up in jail. And it's a pretty interesting comment about how effective that place was. But how close are the level of treatment that you had to the level of treatment that they were doing?
We in fact provided the outpatient chemical dependency services in that site, North Holmes did, as well as the psychological services in terms of plugging in. Buell School, Mesabi Academy is a Department of Corrections, correctional facilities for pretty high-end delinquent kids. We're a mental health provider, predominantly. We have a secure unit for corrections kids too. It's very small. So our bent will be mental health, secure mental health. Almost all these kids, and our prisons are full of them too, mentally ill people. And so we're saying before they get adjudicated delinquent for an assault or some symptom of their mental illness, we'd like to be able to try to treat them in a mental health format. So the level of security, in fact, the level of staff to child ratios is 1 to 3. And so that is up beyond much more supervision, much more staff than the Mesabi Academy. Also, it will be locked because these will be for kids with very, very intensive needs who may be prone to run away, be assaultive, be aggressive, to manage really, really difficult, challenging behaviors. So we like that model.
They're this far apart from...
Any kid on a given day can go one way or the other, depending upon the resources that law enforcement has, the communities have, to either, we got to keep people safe, we have to keep them safe, we're either going to have to put them in jail, or if there was an intensive mental health facility available, they use that. And so that's the direction hopefully we'll go to try to divert more kids from the correctional system.
Representative Lehman moves resolution 20-003, second by Senator Eichhorn. I'd like to make one comment as former county commissioner. I know how important these facilities are because they cause such a strain on local government budgets too, having to send these kids all over the state and country to address the needs. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Number 7 on the agenda, 7A, Development and Community Infrastructure Grants, Resolution 20-004.
Mr. Chair, board members, Chris Ishmael will introduce the development infrastructure projects, and then Whitney Ridlon will handle the broadband-related projects.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have 9 infrastructure projects for your review and recommendation. The total investment on those 9 projects is $2,481,972, and the total investment on the projects, $16,614,829. The leverage is 5 to 1. We'll start with development infrastructure. I'm not going to go into great detail on this project, just because we just got done getting a lot of detail on this project. But this is the City of Grand Rapids requesting $350,000 on the North Holmes project. And just to recap, you see in here I talked about 2 facilities, and I just wanted to clarify that there is an existing facility that'll be renovated out that has beds in it, but those 20 beds will be, the facility be upgraded to this PRFT type of facility, which it isn't at now. So So there is a new building being constructed that'll handle 32 of the beds, brand new, that'll sit next door to the existing cottage that holds 20 beds but doesn't provide that level of service. And you heard the job count, up to 65 jobs. And they're looking at a wellness facility. This is a 10,000 square foot. Second facility is a wellness facility for the residents.
Senator Thomas.
So this isn't the new 350,000, it's the same 350,000 we just talked about?
Correct. Yeah, one grant, 350,000 infrastructure site development for this site. And this component of the project has been bid out. So these numbers, the bids just came in a week or so ago, and a little over 370,000 for this.
Representative Lindenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was that project labor or prevailing wage?
Prevailing wage will be a component of the contract that's put out that they'll be required to comply with. City of Grand Rapids, who will have the contract with, and they'll have to provide oversight on the project.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Second project, thank you. Second project, City of Grand Rapids, development infrastructure, $250,000 been requested for installation of water, sanitary sewer lift station, storm sewer, roadways for a new development site owned by the Grand Rapids Economic Development Authority on the west side of Grand Rapids. And this development will create 15 single-family housing sites and one 15-acre site designed for multi-family housing. This project is expected to create 15 construction jobs. This is a new housing development that'll be located near the new elementary school.
Senator Bach.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ismail, private investment of $1.1 million.
Actually, that shouldn't say private, it should say it's the City of Grand Rapids. Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Thomas.
I just hope that after this packet passes, that we don't have to have the discussion about fiscal disparities anymore when we go over to Grand Rapids.
I'll second that.
Any other questions? Please proceed.
Community infrastructure, first grant for your review would be Boys Fort, Band of Chippewa. They're requesting $250,000. This is for infrastructure, roads, and site work for a new 6,000 square foot facility. The Boys Fort Band of Chippewa is proposing the construction of a new public works maintenance facility at its Vermilion community location on the Boys Fort Reservation. Current Vermilion Public Works facility is a 2,400 square foot metal building which serves as a storage and workspace for public works crews in Vermilion. The facility is undersized, and when we initially looked at the building, you'll see here it needs extensive upgrades. It needs to be demolished. I don't think the cost to upgrade the facility is viable, and I think at this point that's what they'd love to do now. Is to, initially they were going to add on to it, now they're just going to walk away from it because it is in very poor shape. The Vermilion Public Works Department hasn't been able to store equipment. I mean, they have trucks sitting outside that are rusting all weather year round, you know, so they really are in need of this facility. The total project is $1.358 million. They're requesting $250,000. City of Cohasset, they're requesting $250,000 for community infrastructure grant for Phase 2 infrastructure site work and construction of a new 3,000 square foot senior center community center. This phase is part of a $3.643 million project, which includes the construction also of a new child care facility addition to the elementary school in Cohasset. The City of Cohasset will own and operate the new senior center, community center, and child care facility. The city has also invested in an expanded school gymnasium, which will be utilized by the school community and the child care center. The project is expected to create 10 construction jobs, and this component of the project is about $1.3 million. So the City of Cohasset has seen the value in addressing their child care shortage in the region by saying we're going to invest in, the school district gave up a portion of property directly abutted to the building, and the city has made the investment to build out and add on to the elementary school. They're going to own that, they'll have to maintain that, and I believe they're going to hire an independent or leased to an independent childcare operator to run the childcare component. And this would be the community center, senior center side of it. And they've also made a very large investment into making the gym for that elementary school much bigger to serve the public. And I'll entertain any questions on any of the projects at this time.
Any questions on this one or any of them?
I just,
Representative Lehman.
yeah, and I appreciate Senator Thomasoni's comments about fiscal disparities. I'm just really pleased because I see, what I see in this agenda is communities communities addressing the needs that we all have been prioritizing. We just heard about mental health, and now we're hearing about childcare. And I really like this solution where the city's stepping up and providing opportunity for private sector to come in and provide the childcare services. I think that's an innovative model in connection with the school, but it's be done in a little different way. And so, no question, I just wanted to make that comment that's a lot of times we're talking about needs. Well, today we're talking about addressing some of those needs. It's a good place to be.
Senator Bach.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, Representative Lehman, are you appreciative enough that we can not introduce legislation to undo fiscal disparity? I mean, it's not helpful when bills get introduced, tried to undo fiscal disparities, and, I mean, the hair stands up on people's neck when we award all kinds of money to people that don't want to share anything back. I'm just saying, I think it's bad for all of us as a team at the Capitol. So I just think someone needs to stand up, whether it's Cohasset, they were the original local government that objected to fiscal disparities. I have quelled that up in Cook County at Grand Marais, and I have introduced no bills to take Cook County out. I never will during my time. I just think people in that maybe don't have a mine in their close proximity should be appreciative of what the communities that do share wealth with them do, and they shouldn't ask their elected officials to introduce legislation to undo the other side of revenue sharing in addition to taxing. I just want to get that on the record. To try and help my representative and senator from Grand Rapids, those communities have to understand there's a lot of wealth sharing going on here. And fiscal disparities is a very small piece of what actually is being shared across the island.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ismail, do you have any idea how many city-owned daycare centers there are across the range or within the TAA?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandsted, for a minute.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
City-owned?
City-owned.
I don't believe there are any. And in this, so there's a difference here. This would be a city-owned facility, but either run by a nonprofit or run by a for-profit. And again, this is a very complex project in that school districts generally don't give up property they own to anybody, especially when it sits right on their building. So this was definitely all the stakeholders to the table to come up with a different type of solution that benefited the district.
That's all right. So this is kind of a first of its kind.
I wouldn't say in the state, but definitely in our taconite assistance area. I don't believe that there are other city-owned facilities that operate these.
Thank you.
I do want to interject on that one a little bit, because not owned, but the cities have contributed significant resources to the child care infrastructure. So maybe you want to clarify that. I mean, owning the building, but contributing to, you know, I think about the Evelyn facility that we recently, the city participated in a huge way in that.
Right, what we're asking cities to do, one is they're requesting grant money. They eventually become the owner of that grant money to invest back into those facilities. And those are for-profit facilities. When we talk about Evelyn or we talk about Mountain Iron, but not city-owned, but you're right, they are making contributions. I mean, we're seeing tax increment financing in Mountain Iron. We're seeing, here's the land for $1. I know that the city of Evelyn on their property definitely took, as part of their purchase agreement, a much smaller dollar amount than the value of the facility that they sold to help make that deal a reality. So communities are definitely making investment. It's not specifically Cohasset. Correct.
Representative Liziger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just say, for most of the communities, the less you have, the more it means to you. And on the East Range, the resources are limited. And when you go to certain other communities, they have much more resources to be able to do a project like this. And so the less you have, the more it means to you, and the more resources you're giving at a ratio.
Any other questions or comments? Senator Acorn moves Resolution 20-004, seconded by Senator Bach. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Resolution 20-005, broadband infrastructure projects. Ms. Rubin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For your review and recommendation today are 5 broadband infrastructure projects. They're all proposing fiber to the premise broadband, total serving 1,020 underserved and unserved households within the service area. All the projects will provide speeds to the households that meet the state of Minnesota 2026 speed goal of 100 megabytes down, 20 megabytes up per second. The first project is proposed by Boys Fort. That project will serve 442 households. The project will be owned by Boys Fort and operated by Consolidated Telephone Company, also referred to as CTC. The next 4 projects are proposed by Paul Bunyan Communications. They will serve 578 households in Ash River, Captogama, Elephant Lake, and Morecambe Township areas. The Paul Bunyan projects will be owned and operated by Paul Bunyan Communications. Project representatives are here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions too. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Senator Bach.
Well, I mean, when we add these all up, it looks like there's over 1,000 households potentially that could be served. I want to make that clear. Could be served, right? I just would like to know, and maybe some of the providers might be able to tell me, what percentage, when we go down a county road somewhere and we say we're serving that, what percentage of these 1,000 or so people, kind of what's the average of how many people actually hook up? Because the numbers are a little bit optimistic, I think. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're paying a lot of money. I mean, if only 20% of people of these 3,000 or these 1,000 hook up, that's pretty expensive for every hookup. I just want to know if there's, and unfortunately, the state broadband office has never looked at this. I mean, we give money based on how many people you potentially are going to serve, but I don't believe they've ever looked at how many people actually are connecting, and is this costing $500 per household or $5,000 per household? So kind of what percentage, do we have any idea, Whitney, what percentage of people that potentially could be served actually sign up? We recently did one for Paul Bunyan in Itasca County, so I think they have some firsthand experience with how many people potentially could have hooked up versus how many actually are hooked up today. Because I just think we need broadband, but we also, I think, need to know what it's costing, because the potential number of subscribers is different than the number that actually are signing up.
Mr. Ridlin.
Thank you, Senator Bach. All projects are based on different take rates that different companies in different areas propose. And Paul Bunyan Communications or Boys Fort would probably be able to talk in detail about their take rate projections for each of the project areas.
I think, Mr. Chairman, Paul Bunyan could probably be very helpful because we recently did one for them, and I'm just curious what percentage of the people we thought potentially would hook up are going to. I just raise it because I just think we only know what it really costs per connection, not what we're seeing on the sheet of paper today.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, I'm Steve Howard. I'm the Information Technology and Development Manager at Paul Bunyan Communications. It's okay to answer.
Please proceed.
So with regard to take rate, it's a crazy number. It varies from place to place. Probably the community we have the worst take rate is about a third, about 30 to 35%. We have one community that's as high as 90%. There are a lot of factors that come into play. The quality of the existing provider, how well known we are, how tech savvy the community is. So it's all over the place. For these projects, we're anticipating in the first 2 years, 40% take rate, which is pretty typical. I know it sounds kind of low, but we typically see the first couple of years at about 40%, because there's people that are in these, unfortunately, in satellite internet contracts and other cell phone contracts where they've tried to use those technologies to limp by. And after a couple of years, those take rates tend to jump up, and we'd expect to see those in probably the 50 to 60% range at about year 4 to year 5. Again, some are as high as pushing 85, 90%. It just depends on the community.
Senator Bach.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Howard, as long as I have you there.
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of wondering if the state's goals of 100 download and 20 up, is that really necessary? I mean, I have 7 at my house, CenturyLink DSL, and it seems to work pretty darn well. But, you know what I mean? Adding these higher rates costs a lot of money. I'm just wondering, is the state wrong? I mean, are numbers way too high? You know, I mean, I've been told you can download x-rays with 7, right? I mean, or 10. Does it add a lot of additional cost when we get these real high numbers?
It depends who you ask. Different people will give you different answers. I would ask back with the question of, do you want to pay for this again in 5 years? I mean, if we look at where things started, you know, when we first started offering high-speed internet, it was 128K, and our high speed was 256. And of course now we're, you know, 30, 40, 50 times, well, probably more than that, 100 times that offered. My thought is that technology will continue to grow. Many people with 7 would struggle. If you have a number of people in the home, it's tough, especially if you're producing content, YouTube videos, you know, that you're out there monetizing, doing CAD CAM, those types of things. Any kind of production, work in the home type situation where you're producing content, that upload speed you have today is probably problematic. It might be fine if you're just, you know, if your kids are watching videos all day, that's great. But I think realistically, long term, it's not the right answer. The state's probably a little low at 120, frankly, just because the history we've seen with technology. 10 years ago, that'd have been laughable, but we've seen the needs just grow exponentially, and we as a company have made the decisions to invest more now and not have to replace that fiber in the ground, because I'd rather just be one and done, and maybe have to change out electronics a few years down the road. So I think it's the correct long-term investment. I think the state is doing the right thing, because in the end, the state will be ahead, and we won't have to invest 2, 3, 4 times in certain areas when we do it right.
So if you know, and if you don't say anything, but I recently had a meeting with Dish and HughesNet, and they talked about how satellite technology is improving. And I actually have a neighbor who has HughesNet, and he's got a small business, and he runs it out of there, and he tells me it's better than the DSL he ever had. Is the satellite technology continuing to evolve? And at some point, will AT&T, for example, with their DirecTV, be able to get your broadband wirelessly from your cell tower? Where is that? There's a lot happening, you're right. Is it moving quickly? Or I don't want to put a bunch of cable in the ground, or broad wire, whatever, fiber, whatever we call it, if someday it's going to come through the air, right? So I just simply only to know kind of what is in the future. Do we even know?
Of course, we don't know for sure, but I would agree that satellite technology, like all the technologies, is improving. The satellites have gotten better with their spot beam technology, and they have gotten better. But the big thing they have is they're fighting the speed of light. They are 22,000 plus miles away, and a round trip packet up and down is at bare minimum going 44,000 miles, and that creates delay. And when you have a real-time application, even things like as simple as, you know, Skype calls are problematic. I get so frustrated when I'm trying to do a business call with somebody and they're over one of those connections. It's hard to do business with those folks. Yes, that technology will surely get better, I would hope. And certainly, cell technology will get better. We all hear about 5G, it's the latest and greatest, and it's going to solve the world's problems. So the reality is it's limited in distance to a few hundred meters. Well, how many towers are there going to be up in our neck of the woods for any of us in the room? How many are going to have a tower within a few hundred meters? Nobody. And even if they did, how would that get there? There would have to be fiber infrastructure to support that. So yes, those technologies will improve, but I still think fiber is the correct answer. I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
Thank you. Representative Sandsted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Glenn, could you tell the board a little bit about how these grants will interface with the border-to-border grants that are due at the end of this week? I think that's the application deadline.
Thank you, Representative Sandsted. All the projects, all the funding for the projects is contingent on the state border-to-border funding and other confirmed funding contribution. And our funding would be contingent upon awarding of the state border-to-border funding, which would hopefully be announced before the end of the year.
Representative Sanchez.
Thank you for that. If in the event one of these applications were not awarded the border-to-border grant, what would the process be coming back? And if you don't know, maybe the commissioner would be able to answer that.
I would think just like with any project, we would meet with the project stakeholders and figure out a path forward to help the broadband projects move forward. The broadband office was consulted in the formulating of guidelines for these, so a good project to the agency should be a good project to the state border-to-border grant program.
Commissioner.
Oh, one thing, so the border-to-border program requires that the local matches be locked up, so that's why we're taking action on them. But if for some reason a project didn't move forward, we would have to relook at the money maybe for a different project, or, you know, we would take it back, or we would never invest it in the first place, I guess, I don't know. But, my only other comment, I guess, why I raised my hand earlier was, I just want to stress that the number one thing that we hear when we have civic engagement, so we had Recharge the Range where we had hundreds of people show up, and the deputy commissioner has been out going through the communities. The number one thing we hear is broadband. So I was a reluctant to get the agency too involved in broadband, frankly. It's a lot of money, and, you know, as Senator Bach points out, there's lots of unknowns and a lot of moving parts and things, but it still is number one. And then our customer care industry around here, keep in mind, we have like 1,000 employees on the Iron Range that work in customer care. And I don't know if you noticed that Blue Cross Blue Shield's closing the Aurora office because most of their employees are working out of their homes if they have broadband. We were just visiting with the CEO at Anthem in Gilbert, and they're really happy on the Iron Range. But the only thing that's I can't say makes them unhappy, but gives them pause, is the fact that somebody changed homes and they found out that their new location doesn't have broadband, so they can work from home. This is an issue that's, you know, staring us right in the eye. So it's not going to be perfect, I guarantee you, but we're going to have to plug away at it until we. And it's one of those things. I think it's like snowmobile trails. You know, eventually we're going to get built out, one way or the other. It's going to happen, and so I wouldn't look at this being a long-term thing, but, you know, for the next few years, we're going to be looking at broadband investment, just like we're looking at ATV trail investment. I never thought we'd ever have a trails program at IRRRB after we built every snowmobile trail in northeastern Minnesota and groomed it for I don't know how many years. Now we're looking at ATV and mountain bike trails. I don't think we're going to be doing that for long term. I think there'll be a period of time till we get built out a little bit more. So here we are on broadband right now, though. I'll change the subject.
Thanks, Commissioner. Representative
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my short time in the legislature, for sure, broadband has been one of the biggest issues that we have faced, and certainly on the range. This has been one of our greatest needs in terms of diversifying our economy, in education. Last year, we made a grant to the Chisholm School District for technology for attending schools remotely, basically, for students who are struggling to attend. And that connectivity is going to be so critical in that project, let alone education across the board. You know, our students are downloading and uploading assignments and researching, and I could go on and on about that. In terms of the economy, in banking or healthcare, the satellites, you know, are very costly right now, and we might disagree on this a little bit, but the fiber's there, it's solid. It's going to be harder to interrupt on the long term once it's in place than a satellite would be. And Representative Eklund has been a champion down in the state on broadband. It's been a pleasure working with him on that. We've both worked hand in hand. He was carrying finance bills. I was trying to work on some policy stuff. So I think, I just want to say thank you, Representative Eklund, for the work you did down there, and I hope we can get this across the line today, because it's a step in the right direction. It's a step, but it's a step in the right direction.
Senator Bach.
Well, we got a little problem, I think, with our process, Mr. Chairman, that I think we need to think about. Is we approve our budget sometime before July 1st, and then all of a sudden we advertise that we've got some money for projects like this. I think the lead time that providers need to put a proposal together and get here by September is probably too short. I think if we had additional time, if we were doing this maybe in December or maybe in the winter, we'd probably have a lot more applications here. I know one of our large providers would be here, but didn't know that there was some local money available. Because what I learned in kind of researching this is the state's border-to-border office, when you put in an application for one of the state grants, you get additional points in the scoring if you have your local match. So people can put in an application for the straight broadband grant, but you don't get the benefit of a higher score if you don't have your local match in place. So that's what's going on here, and I congratulate Paul Bunyan for recognizing that and wanting to put as strong an application in as they can. But I think it's creating our timeline, Commissioner, and let me just suggest that we need to have a better window from July so that the more providers can get here if we're going to get this built out in a timely way. Now, having said that, if we're going to start to approve projects like this conditional upon them being successful at the state office, I think what's kind of important is if someone's not successful, that the money doesn't stay encumbered. That on June 30th, it comes back to the agency and providers have to start all over, new application, and get in and compete with all the other projects that are out there. Because what I don't want to see have happen is 2 or 3 of these projects not happen, and then we get $1 million tied up, maybe indefinitely, and next year we come around and there's a bunch of good applications, and some might be better than the ones that we had approved the year before. So, Commissioner, can you give us some assurance that if any of these don't happen, because we're likely going to see more of this, right? So let's get a process together that I think that is going to build it out the fastest. And so if we can just be sure that we're not, these projects don't happen, the money doesn't encumbered, and we continue to meet with them for a year, 2, 3 years down the road until they can make it work, I think that would create some comfort for me.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question on, are any of these projects, have pieces of them been reapplied for in previous years? We've been at this for, what, about six years now as far as the state broadband program?
Ms. Ridley.
Thank you, Representative Lewick. To my understanding, none of these have previously been applied for. They've been working on them for years, but this is the first formal application to grant sources.
Commissioner?
I think we'll take very seriously. We'll deal with the timing issues and things, and Whitney has had a lot of communication with almost all the providers over time. The big boys have communicated to us that they're going to be using federal money, some of them, on some of their things, so they have their federal money now, and they'll be coming back to us. So I think we'll work that out, and we will take very seriously the timing issues. We always, on any of our grants, if they don't happen the way they propose them, the money comes back, or we won't encumber it at all in the first place until they get their grant award. So we're 100% on board on that. And we're trying to not discriminate against any provider trying to get a project built. We're trying not to intentionally give somebody an advantage so they can overbuild over somebody else or things like that. It's very sensitive issues around this, but we try to juggle all those interests and come up with what's best for the people in our service area, Are they going to get service? Are they going to get quality service and things like that, so.
Senator Thomasoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Whitney, all of these projects are within the taconite tax relief area, right?
Ms. Reardon?
All the projects are. There's a portion of the Boys Fort project, a small portion that won't be, but matching requirements will be required, and agency funding will only be used for households that are specifically within.
Okay, and,
Senator Thomasoni.
Mr. Chairman, so I got to compliment Paul Bunyan on what they've been doing. As I understand fiber, once you put the fiber in the ground, the capacity is limitless. And it just depends upon the person bringing it to the home, how much they want to pay for, I guess, is what it amounts to. And so I think that your comment about what's going to happen in the future is huge, because there's all kinds of little red lights in my house, and I know they're all on the internet, and so I'm thinking that just me and my wife were there. Just imagine what it's like when you got a family of 4 kids. And in fact, one person told me that they had a spot in their house where the kids would fight for the chair because that was the only spot where they could actually get their information on their phones. But 2 things. So how much does it cost for a person to actually, once the cable's going past their house, how much does it cost for them to hook up to the house? Is there a set cost for that, or is it, go ahead on that, go ahead. Okay.
Typically, we don't charge any kind of installation fee, if provided they do a 6-month commitment. Otherwise, it's $99. And I got to caveat that if their driveway is more than a quarter mile long, sometimes there's a per foot charge after that. But there's no, and then the monthly, there's all kinds of different packages. Our most popular one right now is our basic Gigazone package, which is 250 meg up and 250 meg down for $60 a month.
Okay.
There's lots of other ones.
And then
smaller and larger.
Just a logistics thing, because we've been talking about the border grants and not having been awarded yet. They're all pending. Will any of these projects happen without the money that's in these packages here?
If these don't get funded, we'll relook at them, and there's the possibility. We don't have a contingency plan, but we do. I mean, these are all areas we want to serve, and we'll continue to make efforts to serve them.
And you had some comments about some places 90% of the people sign up, some places not that big. I would assume when you're going past lakes that a lot of people are just summer occupants, and that they probably don't sign up, or how does that?
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah,
or they're seasonal, which creates it makes the business case harder. Whether the areas that are 90% are actually are up in those really high percentages. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there's one. If they happen to be an area that has one particular provider who you've read about lately, we see really great success in those areas. So that typically is more of a factor than whether it's a lake home or not, and we don't. And the penetration of the take rate also doesn't seem to be any correlation to socioeconomic circumstances either. It seems to be other factors, more like age and existing provider and those types of things.
And do you, Senator, out of curiosity, do you have zones that you can't go into because some other provider has it?
Legally, there are no restrictions anymore, like there were in the, prior to 1990, whatever. There are no restrictions like that, but from a business case standpoint, it often doesn't make sense. And we as an organization are striving to go to the unserved because it's part of our mission. We want to help those people. It's good for the economic growth of the region, which is part of our mission to promote the economic growth. So,
Representative Lehman.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I guess I wanted to also add my thanks to Paul Bunyan, and just also my thanks to the agency for having an employee like Whitney who is responsible for broadband. A lot of this wouldn't be happening if we didn't actually have a staff person that was charged with familiarizing herself with all the intricacies of broadband and in helping move this forward. So, thank you for having that position. I think oftentimes in government, we wonder if we're putting money into projects that really don't need money. I think that with broadband, this is a real case of but for our investment, people would not be served. And so that's why I feel good about broadband, is that I don't think Paul Bunyan would be over here I mean, they were over in Bemidji and Deer River, and we were hoping to get them in Grand Rapids. And that was a really big deal when they moved that far east. And now look at, they're just expanding, they're doing it because the public sector is making these investments. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Chairman, a couple of years ago, I looked at Deed published a map of border money, because border money's been around for a while, okay? Not funded one year and funded more next year, but the map was 0 in northeastern Minnesota in our service territory, just so you know. That's when we formed our partnership with Blandon, and Whitney worked with groups of communities. I think we had 6 the first year, either individual communities or groups of community. Then we did another half a dozen the year after. Now you're seeing the fruits of that labor with all these grant applications and stuff. So that map will look different this time around in northeastern Minnesota. It's not happening by accident. It's happening because of hard work, and it's inspiring community leaders. So we don't dream these up. These are the actual people that live there that are coming up with the plans, facilitated by people like Whitney and Brandon and that. But so this is like a groundswell of people wanting this service, and they're generating projects, and now we're seeing some of the applications. So I think we let the process work. Senator Bach pointed out some good suggestions. This is a work in progress. We'll make some adjustments to our guidelines to take that into consideration. And we'll learn from this cycle of what we did right and what we did wrong, but we'll get better at it.
Representative Sandsted. Okay. Motion by Representative Lulick, seconded by Representative Sandsted on Resolution 20-005, and I just have one comment. I like Paul Bunyan's business model, and this co-op is similar to what we got from rural electrification. I think it's a good model moving forward. Any further discussion?
I should point out, just in case people don't know where these places go to work, the township is,
Mr. Chair?
Representative Lulick.
If I could point out, none of these are in my, I do have the distinction of having literally the most unserved and underserved district in the state of Minnesota. I've had a love-hate relationship with satellite, and stuck with that for my TV. But I will report to all you good folks that about 5 times in the last 10 days, while we were watching the little thing about storm warnings and stuff on the bottom of the TV, boom, gone. 45 minutes an hour now. Still got marginal cell phone coverage where I live, and an emergency radio that can tell us stuff like that. But make no mistake, there would have been no watching those storms unless you were hardwired, if you're into that type of stuff. Yeah, we've been at this for quite a while at the legislature. One of the complications that we all have to deal with is the unpredictability of what the legislature does on a 2-year basis for funding. I can remember the day when we were screaming for a couple of $1 million a year, and got to 10 and so on. This is, I'm sure, we all scratched our head about who needed a telephone 100 years ago. Boy, now we went to, everybody should have a cell phone, but this is, I think, pretty basic stuff, and so I'm definitely happy to support this, but I think Senator Bach's right on target. We need to look some more at our process, because we've got to deal with the bouncing ball of the legislature and 2-year funding, plus the cycle that goes on here with people build their projects and get that, those approvals in, because that is a big deal. I follow these not as close as she does, but very closely, because we had one little bitty township in southern Crow Wing County all on their own with a little co-op, got the first grant 5-6 years ago in my district, in our complete area. And let me tell you, you have to know where Fort Ripley Township is, because there's almost as many people in this room as there is in that township. Anyway.
Just briefly, I'd like to expand my request for no legislation on range fiscal disparities to Representative Liz Lagarde and Senator Tomassoni, because Mountain Iron, where Mintac is located, is a significant contributor to range fiscal disparities. Not a recipient, a contributor. So please, no bills to take Mountain Iron out of range fiscal disparities either.
Mr. Chairman, when it first came out, Chisholm was a significant contributor, and I did it. But, Mr. Chairman, I should point out to Representative Lewick's point, when we first started this broadband thing, and I was chairman of the Economic Development Committee, we got in big fights with the Metro people about doing this, and so we actually had to bring this home to start with, to get the money from somewhere, and it's going in the right direction, and they oftentimes refer to it as the same as electrifying rural Minnesota. This is the next big electrifying of rural Minnesota. But one cute little story about cell phones. I got elected in 1992, and I told Representative Rukavina and Senator Januzich that we needed to get cell phones. And they both said to me, "What are you, crazy? You want people to call you?"
Any further discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 20-005, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. One other thing.
Okay, Iron Range Summer Institute's update, Roy Smith coming forward. Mr. Smith, you brought a whole crew today.
I did.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Phillips, members of the board. At our June board meeting, a grant was approved for a pilot project to the districts of Hibbing, Chisholm, St. Louis County, Mountain Iron Buell, Mesaba East, and Ely to create a pilot project that consisted of a series of unique Summer Institute learning experience open to students in grades 5 through 8 from the participating districts. Phase 1 of the pilot project was for students again in 5 through 8 through the summer of 2019, with a potential expansion to include grades 7 through 12 in the summer of 2020. Rick Aldrich, superintendent at Hibbing, Reggie Ingebretson, superintendent at Mountain Iron Buell, St. Louis County Schools are here, along with Greg Allen from Mesaba East and Janie Blanchard from Chisholm, to give you an update on how that went over the summer. So I'll turn it over to them, and I'm sure they're open for questions at the end of the presentation as well.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chair and members of the board and Commissioner, thank you so much for having us. And just like Mr. Smith said, I was here a couple months ago with 2 teachers to talk about the camps that we were proposing to have this summer, and we've wrapped up the camps, and Mr. Aldrich was hired to help coordinate, so I'll turn it over to him to give you a quick PowerPoint update.
Please proceed.
Good morning, everyone. Just a couple of things before we start our PowerPoint. I just wanted to give you a few numbers for participation for our camps. We had 233 students in grades 5 through 8 that participated in a week-long camp. I should preface that a little bit. 2 camps that included one at Northeast Range and one in Mountain Iron that were Camp Broadway camps actually went for 2.5 weeks. All of our other camps went for a week. All camps met from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. We provided all the transportation. We provided breakfasts and lunches for the day for camps. We served approximately 1,500 breakfasts over the summer and 1,500 lunches. Again, our camps ran from the first week of June until the second week of August. What I wanted to show you today was some photos that were taken at our summer camps, and I'll try to highlight some of the camps that students were participating in as I show you these photos. And I hope I have the clicker correct. Yes, thank you. Did I do that right? Wrong? I'm guessing wrong. Let me try it this way. There we go. So this is a Cook and Create class that took place in Southridge. You can see a group of students that were using their home ec facilities and fax facilities at Southridge. This is a program that was called Robot Antics, where it was a computer programming tech-inspired class that took place, I believe, in Cherry. This is a picture from Camp Broadway, and I know it doesn't give you a good depiction of what a drama program looks like, but I just love this photo. It's just kids in summer just getting in Zen before they start to practice their drama production.
Just a second, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a top, Sonny?
Can you dim the lights just a little bit? Is that possible? I don't know if that's possible.
Both of these Camp Broadway projects, again, like I said, were about 2.5 weeks long, met from 9 to 3 each day. These students, the camp culminated with a play for the public that happened in the evening at the end of the camp. Very well attended, very well received. These are also some Camp Broadway photos. Here again is some more of our technology-inspired design. Another cook and create. I should have done the before and after. I'm sorry, the bread here is rising. This is the before picture. You already saw the after. This class here was another class that we had. I'm trying to find the correct. This one also took place at Mount Iron. It was there and back again, mundane to the extraordinary. Another photo of that same class. This is the Wonderful World of Welding and Fabrication that was put on at the Hibbing High School. Terry Vessel was the instructor for this course, and students, again, 5 through 8 students, welding using laser engraver, other equipment that had been purchased through the years through our partnership with ALI. More of those engraver projects. This photo here was actually exploring the outdoor world, and this took place at Southridge. Students are taking different water samples and we're using school forests in the area. And here's another picture of some of those same kids getting water samples. This course here this one is actually another technology-inspired design, but the reason I chose this one, it was at Mount Iron. I wanted to show you 5th through 8th graders using the laser engraver. They actually all made a mug where they could put their name or put some kind of icon on a mug. And these are pretty advanced skills for 5th through 8th graders. Typically, the laser engraver is a high school class, but it just goes to show, again, the ingenuity of kids and how really any level could benefit from these programs. Oh, this course here, I believe, is an art course that took place at Mesabi East. We had a really large interest in the art courses that happened across the range, but the one particularly at Mesabi East was extremely well attended. This is a movie making and script writing class. This course took place in, I apologize, I believe this one was also Mount Iron. Kids really had a fun time with this. They did simulated newscasts and different presentations using their green room. Oh, another one stuck in there from Robot Antics. You're missing a slide. I apologize. When I sent it to Whitney, I thought I had included one other slide, but my last piece was just the future of Iron Range collaboration. And the future of Iron Range collaboration really has just a couple of facets. One is We've learned a lot over the summer. We had some growing pains with busing, had some growing pains with getting lunches out to kids and making that all work. Usually the first day of camp was a little bit hectic, but by the time we got to the end of the week, we'd have all our issues hammered out and things ran really smoothly. What our hope is going forward is to expand this to grades 9 through 12 and to truly focus on our partnerships with local community colleges and ELI to expand sharing of services and sharing of programs in the areas of healthcare, welding, machining, and all the techs and trades. So our plan now is we have career academies in Hibbing. Mickey Brown is my career academy coordinator. Chisholm is also starting career academies. Eric Kuzanen, a shop teacher, is coordinating for them. And currently, Mr. Kuzanen is surveying staffs and programs in all of our range schools to find our strengths and our weaknesses. For instance, Chisholm has a strong welding program, strong facilities for welding, where Mountain Iron necessarily doesn't have that. So we're looking at opportunities to share. Mountain Iron, as an example, has a wonderful food service program that they cooperate with the college for a culinary program. Chisholm, as an example, no longer has a FACS program or has those facilities. So looking to find ways to share students back and forth that truly have an interest in some of these trades and different programs. The last thing I just would like to say is, again, I know Roy highlighted, but we had students registered from the following districts: Hibbing, Ely, Chisholm, Wasabi East, Virginia, Mountain Iron Buell, Southridge, Northeast Range, Tower Sedan, Cherry, and many homeschoolers. We actually opened up the program to also. We did offer the program to students in Nashwauk and Keewatin, but we did not have any students registered for the summer. So that is our update to where we're at this point. Again, our future is to expand to 912, and if you have any questions of Dr. Ingebretson or I, we'd be happy to answer them.
Representative Sandstead.
Well, I have a question. Thank you for the update on that. It's not particular to the summer program. It's just other programs that we're looking at. And Mr. Smith, if you're able to, maybe in the future, it would be helpful if we could hear an update on how IRE 2.0 is going, or the Bell program. We had spoken, and I suggested maybe like a site visit for us before the students return to their home locations, just to see that kind of in effect. And then maybe moving forward in Chisholm, if you can give us an update on how it's working with the enrollment issue that you were facing last year versus this year. That would be great.
I can do it.
That would be great.
Anything else? Senator Thomasoni.
So, remind me again, how many kids total?
We had 233 registered for camps. Some of those kids registered for 2 or 3 camps, so it was really about 115 kids total, but 233 registrations, individual registrations per week.
Sounds like you did a home run.
Pretty awesome, pretty awesome.
You said nobody from Nashwauk or Keewatin. How is everybody being contacted for it? Sounds like it doesn't matter where it's being offered, kids from anywhere can come, right?
Correct. Correct. What we did is all of our superintendents in each school district pass on information to their school staff. It was actually a paper registration form that was passed out to every 5th through 8th grader. And then other schools did, through instant alert systems and notified parents of registration, and depending on the system that they use. But we did have information in the paper. We did reach out to the news media. They didn't pick up the story prior to our registration, which was a little disappointing, but local papers, local media did pick up our information.
So we had an appropriation in the legislature that didn't quite make it to the finish line, but what can you do with another $1 million?
Wow. I think I'll let Dr. Ingebretson answer that question.
I think it's really expanding. I mean, we really want to get to the 912 kids and those ALI programs that sit in the summer and aren't being used, and again, our facilities that aren't being used in the summer, and open up those opportunities, whether it's through certification or, again, some additional credits for students to help them towards graduation, give them those hands-on experiences. So we really found that with the start with the 5th through 8th graders, just opening those doors and allowing them to come to other schools and make connections. I mean, the Camp Broadway instructors talked about how 2 girls talking to each other, and one of them said, wait a minute, I don't think I'm supposed to be talking to you. You're from the rival school or whatever, but just those friendships and connections. So I think that expanding.
The reason I ask is because, so we went through our budget year this year and the K-12 bill passed and everything, and whether or not we'll be able to get new funding into the K-12 system or the E-12 system, I don't know just yet. But I think if you can make the case to us down at the legislature and show us what you will do with another $1 million in the next legislative session, that the possibilities are that, who knows, maybe we can get some money in this next legislative session to actually expand the program and make it even better. Because I got a funny feeling a lot of those kids that are in this program are probably kids that didn't eat, don't eat during the summertime, or they come because they get some food, and at the same time they're learning some skills and they're actually getting some interaction with other kids that they might not have. It sounds to me like it's a win-win, and if we can get some more cash. So if you can actually kind of figure out what you might use it for and how it would expand the program or who would end up being part of it, I think we can potentially make the case and maybe come back with an appropriation after this next legislative session.
Thank you, Senator, and again, expanding to other districts in the region also.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Senator Bach.
Mr. Chairman and Dr. Ingridson, I really appreciate what you're trying to accomplish here. And to Senator Thomasoni's point, I do think there's an opportunity at the legislature to leverage some money with a local match like the school account here. For several decades now, parents have been telling their kids, you got to go to a four-year college. And we have a huge shortage. Just ask anybody who does the hiring in the mines if they can find electricians or find welders, and any of the trades unions, what's going on workforce-wise. So I think to the extent when we bring this into 912, if you're a kid that doesn't grow up in a family that has someone in the trades, and your local school district doesn't teach anymore because it's too expensive, and we're focusing all the money on teaching to the test, this is an opportunity, I think, to expose some young people to occupations with your hands, good, honest livings, that if their parents aren't in it, they don't get it in the regular K-12 system, they're never going to know anything about it. So I think there's a real opportunity here to do something because we're in a blue-collar economy up here, and that's probably not going to change. But our K-12 system is not responding to it as well as it used to. And I think the state's partly to blame for that, maybe more to blame than anybody else. When we started requiring testing, and I understand school boards and school superintendents wanting to focus the money on what we test for, but a lot of good stuff and a lot of occupations are kids aren't being exposed to them any longer. So maybe this is our opportunity in this region to at least get our kids exposed to some occupations that their parents maybe don't know anything about, but are a place where people can make a really, really good living and not necessarily even be tied to one employer, which is always a challenge. And if something happens to that employer, you're done. People that learn how to do something with their hands are very mobile and can always, I think generally always find something to do. So as we move to the 9 through 12 era, I just want to encourage you to take a look at some of those occupations that have kind of fallen out of our school curriculum, so that young people get a chance to get some experience to build a sawhorse or something, right? So I just want to get that out. I do think when we did the applied learning, it was pretty revolutionary, and we got ongoing money coming every year. There is an opportunity, I think, with a local match here to get some ongoing permanent money for a program here. And we're new, we're just starting, but we're starting to, I think, build a story to tell in St. Paul. And if you can tell a good story, and I know you utilized a lot less money than we encumbered for you, and I guess I kind of expected that as a program is new. Most parents, I'm sure, aren't even aware of it, but I'm excited about the potential of it for our young kids, kind of broadening their educational horizon.
Commissioner. The career awareness is the biggest deficit in Minnesota when it comes to workforce programs. I was a deed commissioner for a couple of years, so I had a lot to do with workforce, and That's one of the biggest deficits in the state. So this goes a little ways, and like you say, maybe there's a partnership here in the works. Move on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, maybe before they leave, did you have any problem finding educational staff to teach these? Because most teachers don't come in and teach in the summer, and maybe have something else they're doing or don't want to do anything, but you have any trouble finding staff to work the programs?
Mr. Chair? Yes, Senator Box, no, we didn't have any trouble. We put out a proposal, and similar to our professional development thing that we do for 12 districts and over workshop week, teachers have just been willing to step up. There was a little bit of not sure what they were going to get paid, and even though they were proposed paid less than what they were paid. So I really see this, once they realized they were getting the same wage that they were making during the school year, I really think next year this is really going to expand. But no, people were receptive, and that was great. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing. I don't think I said this the first time, but thank you very much for taking the bull by the horns and doing this, because you guys kind of took it and ran with it, even though you weren't exactly sure what you were getting into. And it looks like it turned out to be pretty good. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anything else? We're adjourned.
Thanks.
George. You got that before that?